Welcome to North Star Oasis. I'm your host, Jeff Williams. We're here for another jam-packed, action-filled information overload. We're here today when we're already into February. We're not going to do the weather. We know that the weather is cold, but we are past the precinct caucuses. Yes, the 2018 Minnesota precinct caucuses have now been held. The 2018 election cycle has officially begun. So now let's take a quick look at what the results were.
Minnesotans cast their first thoughts on who they want to run for governor. Governor Mark Dayton not seeking re-election, so this thing is wide open for both Democrats and Republicans. Thousands of people showed up to cast their votes across the state. Top picks for the governor's race were Democratic Representative Tim Walz, Republican Jeff Johnson. On the Democratic side, this is with 72% reporting. Look at these vote totals, very small, but Walz has more than 30% of those who cast their ballot in the straw poll. State Auditor Rebecca Otto in second with just more than 20%. Then former Minnesota House Majority Leader Erin Murphy and former St. Paul Mayor Chris Coleman. Let's show you the Republican numbers. This is, with the whole deal, 100%. Again, total of about 10,000 votes here. Jeff Johnson, clear winner, more than 45%. Then Keith Downey, Philip Parrish, and Mary Giuliani Stevens. More than 15% of voters said they were undecided, maybe because they're waiting to see what former Governor Tim Pawlenty does. Pawlenty announced yesterday that he's leaving his job at a Washington lobbying firm. Last month, he said, nope, I'm not going to run for U.S. Senate. But he has not said if he would throw his hat into the governor's race. But would you quit your $2 million a year job unless you were going to run for something, Pat?
Man, give that up in Washington. Here we go again.
Yeah.
I mean, all the speculation. So undecided comes in number 2 for the Republican governor's race. That's Tim Pawlenty, isn't it? I mean, isn't that Tim Pawlenty?
Do you think he's actually going to do it, though?
Well, I think he is taking a very serious look at this. We have been talking to him for a number of months, and he has been reluctantly saying, I'm politically retired right now. But all the signs are pointing to him taking a serious look at this. He has been talking to donors. We have talked to people that he has spoken with. So he is seriously looking at this. And if he jumps in, I think he becomes an instant front-runner. One of the things we saw last night, however, I also believe, is how few people came out. Once again,
yeah, those
very
numbers
few
are
people,
really small,
really,
a couple
really
thousand.
Low, really, really low. So this is not just because it's a caucus state in Minnesota. It was very cold. People didn't really get out. I mean, it was so cold for the last few weeks. So there's that also. But I think it indicates that there is a lack of interest right now on the Republican side. And on the Democratic side, they had a lot of people coming out. So that could be a signal.
If
for
you're
what's
a
coming
Trump
out.
voter, though, Minnesota almost voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
Does former Washington lobbyist for a bank, Tim Pawlenty, really trip your trigger?
Well, even though Tim Pawlenty would come in as a front runner right away, that is exactly what is going to happen. Democrats in Washington, yesterday I was talking with already are saying this is a Washington lobbyist, somebody who made millions of dollars while the rest of Minnesota had a hard time recovering from the recession. That's what you're going to see if Tim Pawlenty jumps into the race.
And that, of course, is the political spin put up by the Democratic Party right after the caucuses. Here's the whole thing. 10,909 votes were cast in the Republican caucus gubernatorial preference ballot. 10,909. Looking at the Democrat side, 33,260 votes were cast. We have 3.2 million voters in Minnesota and a population of about 5.5 million people. We're not even at the 50,000 vote mark in the precinct caucus system. So that tells me one of two things. Either there is virtually no interest on behalf of voters in politics at this point in time, and that's why nobody shows up, or perhaps the precinct caucus system itself is antiquated and it no longer has the usefulness that it used to have. Now, that's not to say that the caucuses weren't good when we were more of a rural agrarian-based society, but with technology and short attention spans and lack of dedication, I say lack of dedication meaning that not everybody participates in the process, but they care enough to vote. That's what's happening here. 50,000 out of 3.2 million voters. The problem is the caucus system in general. Now, there are some benefits as far as organizing your precinct and meeting volunteers, getting the delegates for state conventions. So it does have still a little bit of a useful purpose. But politics has just changed over the decades. That's really what we're just seeing here is the lack of apathy. Now, let's take a look at what the attendance was like 2 years ago when we had a presidential race. In my legislative district, we had 88 people who voted this year in the gubernatorial race. We had 729 2 years ago. So I think, yes, a legislative district.
But the 88 was for a Senate district.
No, was that Senate district?
Yep.
We had 88 people in a Senate district this time around, so that was even lower than I had envisioned. Whereas we had 729 2 years ago in a state house district. I was just corrected on that, rightfully so. So I just think that people aren't tuned into the gubernatorial race right now. That's got a lot to do with it. So whatever the talking heads on WCCO have to say, Pat Kessler, and I can't remember the name of the other guy, a lot of it's irrelevant because right now we're just seeing voter apathy because the candidates have, at least let's look at it on the Republican side. The candidates did not do that much to drive people to caucus this year. Honestly, there was very little in the way of mailing. There was little in the way of phone calls. They were not doing a lot to drive people to caucus. So you're going to have results like this. Honestly, this has no real bearing on the long-term perspective of how things are going to go in the 2018 election. Now, on the Democrat side, Tim Walz may be the winner right now, but that does not guarantee he's going to be the nominee. Jeff Johnson is the winner on the Republican side on the straw poll, but that does not necessarily mean he's going to be the endorsed candidate there either. Now, I will note, just look, the DFL has broken things down in their congressional district attendance. And if you look at the 4th congressional district, they had 6,074. That's St. Paul and suburbs. You look at the 5th district, they had 8,801. And only the 8th congressional district, northeastern Minnesota, has, well, actually the 3rd district in the Minneapolis suburbs, they had 4,256. And then everybody else is under 4,000. That's where the people are coming from who voted in the Democrat preference poll. But there's a lot of campaigning to be done between now and November. The campaigns have now just begun. And addressing the undecideds on the Republican side, that is not all Tim Pawlenty, as Pat Kessler asserted. Matt Dean, state representative from Dellwood, he withdrew from the race a week or two ago, and a lot of people who are Matt Dean supporters hadn't figured out which other candidates they would be inclined to support yet. So a lot of undecideds are just simply the fact that they would have voted for Matt Dean, but he's not there, so I haven't made a choice. I'll click undecided. There's a lot of that to be said, too. So this is going to be interesting as the 2018 gubernatorial race is underway. Now, also, Minnesota has 2 Senate races. So that's not even accounted for in how things went on the precinct caucus. So with that being said, of course, there's a lot to be said about something that happened last summer and that was brought up again. And a note to my producer, Dallas, make sure we have the correct clip. This is President Donald Trump. Last summer, he saluted U.S. troops at the Bastille Day Parade in France. And we're going to go to that now. So we'd shown you Trump saluting U.S. troops at the Bastille Day parade in France. That became a very inspirational moment for our president because he has been wanting a military parade along the similar styles ever since. And so he's been touting plans, and the Pentagon announced a couple of days ago that they're actually making plans for a military parade. Let's take a look.
France's Bastille Day celebrations could be copied by the United States. Inspired by his visit to Paris last year, President Donald Trump now wants a show to call his own. He's ordered the Pentagon to look into the possibilities of staging a military parade. The White House says Trump wants something for all Americans to show their appreciation. France's parade included marching soldiers, tanks, armored vehicles, and a flypast of US and French warplanes. A Pentagon spokesman says the Department of Defense is only exploring the possibilities at this time.
We are located at the ground.
So now I'm actually going to be looking at something because this has been a source of controversy on President Trump wanting to do a parade. There have been people who have said, oh, we never do military parades. Military parades, that's not what we do. I've heard a lot of those comments. Well, for those who say we never do military parades, I present to you the first major military parade in our nation's history. It's called the Grand Review. It was a 2-day event. So that's how long it took for the federal armies to assemble. Yes, we had a very big deal for President Andrew Johnson right after President Lincoln's assassination. Spanish-American War veterans, they had a parade in New York City on August 20th, 1898. World War I veterans had a parade in New York City on September 10th, 1919. World War II veterans had their New York City Victory Parade January 12th, 1946. Vietnam veterans had theirs in 1986 in Chicago. And then Gulf War veterans marched through Washington, D.C. on June 8th, 1991. Yes, we have had military parades. There's only 2 groups of veterans who have not had their parade yet. Number 1 is Korea. The Korean War veterans never had a parade. And that's actually the reason why I'm wearing a field jacket today. I wore this when I was stationed in Iraq. I came home, I put it on the hanger after dry cleaning, and it's been on the hanger for 14 years. I kind of dusted it off today, and I'm wearing this because Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom veterans and Operation Noble Eagle after 9/11, those veterans have not had their parade. We have not. When I came home and when a lot of my colleagues and comrades in arms came home, we automatically went back into the next training cycle for the next deployment. And then we came home and we got back in the training cycle for the next deployment. And I know people who've been over in the Middle East 8 times. You can argue the policy as much as you want about whether we should be there or how we should conduct wars and operations and all that. That's not the point of this. The point is that we were always working on that next thing, that next thing, that next thing. And some of us are no longer in uniform. President Obama stated during his tenure that we're withdrawing all troops from Afghanistan except for a small token force. He withdrew us out of Iraq, helped create ISIS. But he never declared victory. He never said, for those who served, this is your time for parade. Never said that.
There was no such thing as victory.
So President Trump comes in and hires generals to actually get the military job done. Secretary of Defense James Mattis. We had a limited engagement in Iraq and Syria. 98% of ISIS territory is no longer in ISIS hands. We've essentially crushed them over there, but you're never going to hear that on the mainstream media. Maybe now, almost 18 years, well 17 years after the attacks of 9/11, maybe now is the right time for closure and for healing for the troops of Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom and Noble Eagle to have their parade. Now, I've had Democrats who've told me, oh, well, it's going to cost $22 million to have Trump's parade. And I asked them, did you support staying in the Paris Climate Agreement? Well, yeah, we had to do that. But as we've discussed on this show before, it had absolutely no effect on temperatures, and the U.S. had committed $3 billion to that. These are the same people who say, oh, well, I'm in favor of saving money everywhere. So then $22 million should be a drop in the bucket. There's wasteful fraud and abuse happening in all forms of government every single day and every single year. Maybe $22 million is a cheap price to pay for closure after years of war. So now going back to what we had when I mentioned that we had a grand review, we put together a compilation. Unfortunately, Spanish-American War veterans kind of got cut on the cutting room floor, but we're going to show you a compilation with the grand review from the Civil War, Pershing's parade in New York after World War I, and then the New York City Victory Parade for World War II. I'm going to show you that compilation now.
We are located at the Grand Army of the Republic Monument in downtown Washington, D.C. at 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue. This is the scene of the very first act of Union veteranhood, the Grand Review. On May the 23rd and 24th, 1865, more than 100,000 Union veterans from the Eastern and Western armies paraded down this street, beyond sidewalks choked with civilians, ready to celebrate the end of the war, ready to celebrate Union victory. The men in the marching ranks, however, they weren't so sure. The road ahead was uncertain. Americans, of course, were as unprepared for the peace as they had been for the war itself. There was no Veterans Administration. There was only a nascent pension bureau. Not until 1890 would we have a Dependent and Disability Pension Act that would establish an old age pension for all disabled Union veterans.
Major General James Gavin, 38-year-old West Pointer and youngest division commander in the U.S. Army, stands by with his men in the rendezvous area, waiting for his division's last H hour in World War II. This is the jump-off. This is Operation Homecoming, the last official mission of the all-American 82nd Airborne Division. Their objective? The 4.5-mile parade route through New York City, the largest big-time victory parade since Pershing AEF down 5th Avenue in 1919. Reinforced with veterans from 3 other airborne infantry units, the 13,000 crack glider and paratroops of the 82nd swing to the proud cadence of the foot soldier. Their first salute they throw to their comrades who must stand on the curb, whose red blood and purple heart pulse to a parade they cannot march in. Chosen as a typical fighting unit, the 82nd's divisional colors carry 10 battle streamers from this war. With 467 days of combat time, the 82nd was decorated for the Sicily campaign, for the fighting around Rome and Naples, and for jumping down the chimney of Hitler's fortress Europe to spearhead the Normandy invasion, for the Nijmegen drop on the Rhine, and for helping to break the back of the Wehrmacht in the Battle of the Bulge.
So that was World War II, World War I, and the Civil War parades. We've had military parades before. They do happen. As a matter of fact, Eisenhower and Kennedy both had missiles and tanks going down Pennsylvania Avenue during their inaugurations. So I've also heard the excuse, oh, we don't want tanks to tear up the roadway. It's been done before. So the fact is that we do celebrate the service of people who have fought in defense of this country. And that's really what this should be. And I'm really hoping that that's what President Trump does. That's what he makes this over. We're going to take a look at Vietnam. Now, I'm going to apologize already. The video and the audio on this is pretty poor. But it is also very important. Because the people from the Vietnam generation, they never got their parade either, right when they came home. Like we saw with Iraq and Afghanistan, people come home in piecemeal. Victory was never fully been declared. So what happened with Vietnam? They came home. Now a lot of Vietnam vets, my father was one of them, came home to a rough homecoming. Where was the opportunity for closure? In 1982, the Vietnam veterans got their memorial in Washington. That was a step in the right direction in the healing process. Then, in 1986, they held a parade in Chicago. Here is the video from that parade. Again, apologize for the poor video and audio quality.
An estimated 150,000 participants, 300,000 spectators in Chicago, rousing tears and silent cheers for the Americans who fought in the Vietnam War. Good evening. It was the biggest welcome home ever for the Vietnam veterans. It's not over yet. It continues throughout the weekend.
The focal point today, though, was the parade. It wound through nearly 3 miles of the heart of the city, and Chicagoans poured out their hearts. The vets appreciated it. You could tell. Those who could not be here were represented. It's been 11 years, but we remember. It was America's long-awaited salute for the VF vets. Did you take me back then? I do it all over again. No regrets. Went into college when I got back. We couldn't brag about the fact we were Vietnam vets because there was so much percent on the campus. And now it's really good. It's nice. And you can look at the people. You don't have to talk to them. You know what y'all feel. We're getting some nice pictures in the city there. It was good to have people come up and say, welcome home. And after the parade, the vets gathered in Grant Park, where the replica of the Vietnam War Memorial stands.
As darkness falls on this historic day for Vietnam vets, they're still drawn to that memorial, the wall. It is more than wood and plexiglass. It is a record of lives snuffed out in a war that America would not win. The wall coaches that emotions that have been long buried, but these vets have seen the face of violent death, and they know that life in some form goes on as surely as the sun follows the night. And so they remember, they cry for dead friends, they laugh with long-lost friends, all at the wall. Tonight, the grief has given way for some vets to a release of other long pent-up emotions. Chicago is alive tonight with parties. Wherever two vets meet, the bond they shared will strengthen. Celebrations took on many moods, ranging from the boisterous to the very private. One veteran chose to quietly honor the soldiers who fought and died in Vietnam.
I think we were some of the first people who were desperately concerned about their frame of mind. And tried to tell them that you know what you did. We love you. We appreciate it. And we're here to help.
Events honoring Vietnam veterans will continue through the weekend.
We have some very sad news to report tonight for anyone who loves music. Benny Goodman, the legendary King of Swing.
And yes, Benny Goodman, he passed away the same time. Notice that was Robin Robinson, who in the Twin Cities has been known for being on KMSP, Channel 9, at least through 2010, before becoming Matt Intenza's DFL running mate for governor back there, and that ticket did not win. But the point is that the Vietnam generation needed welcoming home in their parade, just like their fathers who came home from World War II. That was important. It's important to that generation. What happened after Desert Shield and Desert Storm in 1990 and 1991? We had a parade. Here it is. Here's a little excerpt.
Artillery fire support. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Major General Henry H. Shelton and the 82nd Airborne. Troopers of the 82nd Airborne Division were the first ground forces deployed to Saudi Arabia. They began the deployment only 5 days after Iraq invaded Kuwait.
Division initial mission was to secure the international airport at Dhahran and secure the port of Jubail for the arrival of additional forces. And that they indeed did.
The 82nd Airborne Division is the only airborne division in America's armed forces. Nicknamed America's Guard of Honor, the division remains ready to begin combat deployment to any spot on Earth within 18 hours of being told to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Major General J.H. Binford P. III and the 101st Airborne Division.
Full diamond formation, naval fighter and attack aircraft.
Lieutenant General Charles H. Horner, U.S. Central Command Air Forces. The United States Air Force Band and the Air Force Reserve Pipe Band under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Alan J. Bonner and Drum Major Master Sergeant Jack Story. Ladies and gentlemen, Brigadier General Mike Hall and the 14th Provisional Air Division, representing the Tactical Air Forces of the United States of America.
So that was the last time we had a military parade. That was June 8th, 1991. We haven't had one since. But have we had a need? I think so. Again, I will reiterate, my feelings on this are, yes, we should do a parade, but it's got to be done for the right reasons. It cannot be done just to stroke the ego of the president. That's the biggest thing that my Democrat friends fear. But if he turns it around and says, Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans, this is your moment, I think we'll have a groundswell of support that nobody can stop. Because for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, this should be our moment. Anyhow, we are going to turn the tables over a little bit. We're going to kind of change the tone of this. And, of course, we'll find out more as to what goes on. And I will also mention, just before I started the show today, that ahead of the Winter Olympic Games, North Korea had a military parade. Now, one can argue, last thing on the military parade, one can argue that this is just Trump trying to act like the others to show strength. And you know, that might not necessarily be a bad part of policy. That goes back to what happened with Teddy Roosevelt and the Great White Fleet, which we'd also covered on the show a year or two ago. He had a massive naval demonstration, went all the way to Japan and China to show them that we can mobilize quickly. And perhaps Kim Jong-un, or whatever his name is, might use that reminder too. Just something to consider. But anyhow, we are going to move on a little bit because we did have the Super Bowl here, but we did not do our Prager University segment of the day. So we're going to go right to that about trophies. Trophies are for winning.
Participation trophies. I'm not a fan. They're bad for kids, bad for parents, bad for society. Other than that, they're okay. Don't get me wrong. I love any kind of organized competition for kids. I lived and breathed baseball, basketball, football, and soccer growing up. If there was a sport to be played, I played it. And never once did anybody ever tell me that winning was not important or that showing up was all that mattered. But today, kids get a different message. Losing, no big deal. Showing up, that deserves a trophy. Wow. What an awful thing to tell a kid. Glad my parents or coaches never said it to me. If they had, I'm sure I never would have become a pro soccer player. Let me tell you why. In high school, I was a good soccer player. I thought I could play soccer in college. Looking back, though, I just wasn't good enough in those college coaches' eyes. I tried out for the UCLA team as a walk-on. I made it. I was vindicated. I had arrived. On the bench. The coach hardly ever looked at me. I'm not even sure he knew my name. I know he didn't care about my feelings. I wanted to be a starter. I wanted to be a winner. Shouldn't I have been satisfied just for making the team? Of course not. That's absurd. But isn't that what kids are told today? You're a winner, even if you're not. Even if you come in last, and we'll give you a trophy, just for showing up, just for participating. This belief that showing up is an accomplishment is self-destructive because the pain of losing is part of what drives one to improve. The frustration of going to game after game and sitting on the bench drove me nuts. I had to practice more. I had to work harder. Or I had to give up. And I didn't want to give up. This taught me an important lesson. If you don't put in the work, you won't get ahead. And not getting ahead, well, that feels awful. So put in the work or go home. So I put in the work. I pushed myself not to do my best, because who can possibly know what their best is? But to be better and better. And one day my chance came. Coach put me in the game, not because I wanted so badly to play, but because he needed me. I played well enough to start the next game where I scored a goal and had an assist. After that, I started every game. The road to victory in sports, in business, in life is paved with losses, painful losses, losses that can hurt so much it's hard to breathe. Any professional athlete or successful entrepreneur will tell you that's true. But participation trophies? Everybody is the valedictorian, and let's all pat each other on the back awards communicate a different message. They tell you that losing doesn't matter. It matters. They tell you that competition is, at best, not important, and at worst, dangerous. I wonder how my soccer career would have turned out if I'd grown up with these ideas in my head. I was cut twice during the tryout period for the 1992 Olympics. My pro soccer team, the LA Galaxy, lost 3 times in the championship before we finally won in 2002. Guess what? I survived all these disappointments and a whole lot more. They only made victory that much sweeter. In the real world, you're rewarded for achievement, not effort. Promotions don't go to the employees who did their best. They go to the employees who did the best. But what if the kids can't handle losing? What if it's too painful? That's the whole point. It's your job as the adult, as the parent, to help them understand that losing, that not getting what they want, is a part of life. Nobody likes to fail, but it's inevitable. And it's the only path, ultimately, to success. Yes, showing up and participating is important. Trying your best is important, but neither deserves a trophy. If you want one of those, go win something. I'm Kobe Jones for Prager University.
Go win something. How about the Lombardi Trophy? Because that was here in Minnesota. For the 8 days leading up to the Super Bowl, yours truly, was actually working at the Super Bowl experience at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Had a great time, met a lot of great people, put in a lot of long hours, a lot of hard work, but it was very rewarding. And yes, I did get a chance to see the Lombardi Trophy. And as I told a lot of people, if you want to see it during the regular week, just go on out to Green Bay. It's only a few-hour drive to the east, and they got 4 of them on display. But in the meantime, we're going to show you right now what the Super Bowl experience looked like, in case you didn't make it.
The NFL's biggest game is Sunday between the Philadelphia Eagles and New England Patriots in Super Bowl 52. But on Friday in Minneapolis, there was a big party at the Minnesota Convention Center. It's a family-friendly indoor event on an evening with temperatures well below freezing.
Well, it's for all ages. They have, stuff for everybody to do. Kids, she's super excited about it. So, it's great that it's, family friendly.
Football fans of all ages go head-to-head on artificial turf.
I knew I was going to beat him before the race started.
Why were you so confident about that?
Because I know my dad can't run as fast as I can.
I was just trying not to get hurt, so yes, successful. We both won.
For most fans, an event like this is about as close as it gets to the near mythical status of playing in the NFL.
I've seen the trophy and the rings, and we even punted some balls and threw some balls. It was fun.
The NFL's Minnesota Vikings were just one win away from playing in the Super Bowl. And for many here, that's still a fresh wound.
After the Vikings lost, I lost hope, so I don't really care.
My heart aches a little bit once I see Patriots and Eagles, but, it is what it is. Just like every Vikings fan, maybe next season.
Minnesota borders Canada, and while they have their own football league there, the NFL draws fans from all over the world.
It's been a really cool experience, I think, for the kids as well, just to see it. And, you see all these people on TV all the time, and then all of a sudden you get to see some of them in person. And so, don't get those kind of experiences in Canada, that's for sure.
The NFL is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business. Despite heightened awareness of head injuries and their long-term effects on those who play, football is still the biggest sport in the United States, and Sunday's Super Bowl is the biggest stage of them all. Arasher Abasadi, VOA News, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And yes, it was a very, very big deal with the New England Patriots versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think, as we know by now, the Philadelphia Eagles played a really, really tough game and won the Lombardi Trophy, and congratulations to the Eagles. Now, as something I've asserted for a long time, really since Reggie White came to Green Bay, I do believe from the bottom of my heart that teams that have faith in God usually are the ones that end up as the winners. And again, I don't have science to back this up, but you have to say, you just marvel at the Philadelphia Eagles season. And there is a big reason behind their success this year. And I will also say, before I go any further, I've got a little bit of a hoarse voice today because I'm still talked out from the Super Bowl experience. I have not had a chance to recover my voice. Maybe by next week it'll come back. But I do believe that the Philadelphia Eagles do have something very, very special, and something that I know that team wants to share with everybody. Let's take a look at their binding force.
A journey through faith can be very personal. It leads to deep introspection. Through this reflection, one can take a step back and discover their path. The end of the trail may lead to a common goal, but the beginning of the pilgrimage is a step of solitude.
I went to Bible study, I went to church, often growing up, but it wasn't until I was in my last year of college where I realized I was kind of living off of everyone else's salvation. Like, I wasn't really finding out things for my own. I wasn't diving into the Word or exploring that the way I explored everything else around me. So that's when I kind of realized that I was kind of living the wrong way.
Grew up going to church, got confirmed in a Lutheran church, but I never really knew exactly what I believed or why. I remember just having some college mentors, some former teammates kind of just help walking me through the Word. You know, I ended up reading the whole New Testament of the Bible in the first 3 months of my freshman semester, and it just became real to me.
You know, for me, you know, I was kind of on this downward spiral because the things that I was trying to place in my life to give me satisfaction would last for a little bit and then they'd fade away. And that was my sophomore year in high school. I was really at a crossroads at that point, and had to make a decision on where I was going. And that's when I gave my life to Christ, and really He supplied that satisfaction and that joy for me.
When their separate journeys led them to the NFL and the Philadelphia Eagles, they sought an outlet to come together and created a way to share their faith.
Chapel for us here is that in the NFL, since our Sundays are taken up, you can't go to church. So you have the opportunity to attend chapel, which is like a small church service, and we're able to get our word in.
Every Monday night we have a couples Bible study. We have a Thursday night team Bible study, and then Saturday nights we actually get together the night before the game and just kind of pray, talk through the Word, what guys have been reading, what they're struggling with, and just kind of keep it real with each other. To have that here in an NFL facility like this, it's really special.
From baptisms to sharing their faith in the community, they've grown together and challenged each other to be better, not only as teammates, but more importantly, as men.
I think the biggest thing that we're always challenging each other with is just to not lose sight of the bigger picture. I think wins, losses, highs, lows, everything that comes with this game, it's so easy to take your mind and your eyes off of the ultimate prize, and that's living for the Lord.
As men, you tend to be very sheltered. If I'm going through some things, I may not express that to the next man. And when you can kind of expose your weaknesses and things you want to work on, whether it's in your relationship or your marriage or your family, whatever it may be, when you're able to talk about it amongst your brothers, amongst your family, it helps you grow. And when you realize that you can apply biblical principles to it, it helps us all grow.
We want to be united. We want to support each other. We want to support each other in our lives, through the difficulties of, off the field, as well as on the field. And so I think it's really kind of something to where, we're all just kind of binding together to kind of keep each other, sharpened and keep pushing forward.
While religion can be a divisive topic of conversation, this is not something that these players let divide the locker room.
We're all grown men, so we have certain type of conversations where, you can respect it. If there's someone that believes in something else, you don't just throw the Bible at them or argue with them about what their beliefs are, whether they're Muslim or whatever. That's what they believe in, then they have the right to believe in that. But you can share what you know. I think it's important not to look down on other religions as well. Because as men, we all have challenges. And it's nothing different than other men outside of this locker room. So when you can use somebody like Carson or Earth, like these guys are able to talk to guys who are going through some things and just introduce them. They're not throwing the Bible at people. I think they're conscious of that as well.
Some people get turned off when you want to talk about religion and spiritual things, and you just always have to have the right touch with it. I'm going to be genuine, I'm going to be authentic with believers, non-believers, it doesn't matter. I'm going to love on them, I'm going to treat them all the same, I'm going to respect them, and at the same time, as a leader of the football team, I'm going to lead everybody the same too. And it kind of makes it open. I think guys are willing to talk when you don't have this self-righteous attitude about you. You're just open to talk about spiritual things, talk about religion, talk about real life issues with believers, non-believers, and everybody in between. When you have that mutual respect for your teammates and really everybody, it just makes it a healthier environment.
When men come together in a common goal, their combined efforts exceed what each man can do individually. And that standard is not just talking about their faith, but living it. They strive to give back to the community as well.
I feel like it's a part of my purpose. If you know all the things I've been through, I probably shouldn't be sitting here in front of you. And for me, I think it's important that other kids know, go out, and show people that, he's real. And talk to them about it. Because when I was you couldn't tell me, if God's real, why is all of this happening to me? If he loves you so much, why are we in this situation? That's a real struggle for a lot of people. And, you know, when you're young and you're growing in your faith and you're going to church because that's what your mom told you to do, and that's kind of how I was living, so I can relate to him. So when I can talk to him like, hey, man, this is just a storm, this is just a trial, it's the first of many. But just to continue to stay steadfast, which is something that's said 1 billion times in the Bible, which kind of hit home with me. That's what I try to do. I'm not perfect, never going to be perfect, actually, but it's something that I try to grow and try to share with the youth as well, you know, when I have that opportunity.
I started a foundation this offseason called the AO1 Foundation, and it stands for Audience of One, to use my platform to raise awareness for things I'm passionate about. The biggest thing is just overseas, you know, going on that mission trip to Haiti and just seeing third world countries and just seeing all the need there. We were only there for a couple days. You know, you go down there, everyone goes on mission trips thinking they're going to go change the culture, change the country, really impact the people there. And you do get that opportunity, but I think everyone generally leaves, and I know this is true for me, with a new perspective on their own life. You know, I think we saw firsthand how people are living in a third world country. You know, they're bathing in sewage water. There's trash lining the streets. You know, that's just like normal living for them. But at the same time, they have real joy. They do life together, they have relationships. As we in America have so much stuff, so many material things, and you sit and wonder, do we really have real joy? So that's one of the biggest emphasis of the foundation. Another one is service dogs in the Philadelphia area. I'm very passionate about animals, about dogs. I have 2 myself, and I know how much they mean to me. But I've seen firsthand how service dogs can ultimately change people's lives. That's really cool and something I'm passionate about. And then the last thing, to help provide those opportunities, those hunting opportunities for kids that are sick, cancer patients, wounded vets, just different opportunities that they maybe would never receive or get the opportunity to do. Just trying to help make their lives better, give them a sense of joy. And those are all kind of random things, but they're things I'm passionate about. And so starting the foundation to me has been one of the most fulfilling things so far, and it's really just getting started.
And regardless of what one thinks about the way the Philadelphia Eagles fans operate, the fact is the team itself has been acting with a lot of integrity. And the faith in that locker room has spilled over to other teammates. And this is, again, lead by example. So there's an interesting story that happened regarding one of the members of the team, or a couple members of the team. We're going to show you right now.
Standing on the platform, and Trey and I got in the water, and that was the first time I've ever been in a cold tub, and it took my breath away. My goodness!
So they couldn't put any warm water in there.
It took my breath away.
It had to be cold.
Yeah, and so the guys started. I've got the video on my phone. The guys started singing. You know, it was crazy. It was surreal. The guys started singing "Take Me to the Water" was what they were singing, and we baptized 2 players, and I was getting ready to. I got it on video. I was getting ready to walk out, and then here comes Michael Kendricks, which. Yeah. Of anyone that I thought would ever get baptized, I didn't think it would be Michael Kendricks.
All right, so expand on that. Talk about why you don't think Michael Kendricks would get baptized and where it was coming from.
But it was God was working this. I
know what you mean by that.
Yeah. But even there's something even past that, and it goes back to Trey again. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, Michael Kendricks, he's the one that Rihanna said that she wanted to sleep with, and Michael's kind of a ladies' guy, and kind of I've been working on Michael. Michael would never come to the Bible study. But this is also the amazing thing about these guys and just living out their faith. I think it was the week before. No, it was the week of the first game. Trey calls me and says, I tore my calf. Mm-hmm. And he called me like I was a trainer. He said, Pastor Ted, I tore my calf. I need you to come lay hands. And I said, wow. Okay. And I said, do you want me to come to the facility? He said, I'm almost home. Meet me at my house. And so I get to his house, and there's his wife and 2 kids, and it's funny, it's like they knew what was going to happen. They were there waiting. He's in a booth. Wow. I go in, I lay hands, we all lay hands on him. And what happened, I think the next thing, I wasn't even sure what happened. I get a phone call from Michael Kendricks, who never calls me. Yeah. And all Michael said to me was, it works. And I said, what are you talking about, Michael? What works? He said, what you did to Trey, it works.
He probably thought you were like,
And I said, what are you talking about? He said he tore his calf. He said we had the same injury. He said we were both sitting on the table, and he said, and the next day he's up running around, healed, And I asked him, what injection did you have? And he said, Pastor Ted, pray for me. Yeah. So he said, well, I'm going to find out. He's going to do that for me. And I said, well,
Here we go.
I said, well, you got to understand. I said, I didn't heal him.
Right.
I said, I got into agreement with his faith. He believed. He said, well, I need that too. I'm coming to your house. Where do you live? I need you to anoint my body, or whatever it was you did with him, I need you to do it with me. I gave him my address. Half hour later, Michael Kendricks was at the door. We went down to my basement, and of course, about 2 hours later, he was born again or rededicated his life.
Right, because I'm sure you're not just laying hands on him.
When I explained to him, I said, look, man, I said, this isn't magic. I said, it's faith, and you didn't come here for something physical. You came for something spiritual. I said, because, dude, you got it all.
What a great moment.
And it's not enough, is it? And he was like, no. So what my point was, and then he, I prayed for him, what have you, and he never came to Bible study, but he was hearing and seeing just God move. And so here we're getting water baptized, and next thing I know, there's Michael Kendricks, because he said he heard that they were getting water baptized. And it's funny, in the ESPN article, he even cussed. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So he was like, we got some work to do. He was like, we got some work to do, but that's beautiful.
All right,
and next thing you know, Michael Kendricks steps into the water, gets baptized, and then two more guys that weren't going to get water baptized got water baptized. Yeah.
It's amazing when the Spirit's moving like that.
Absolutely.
The Philadelphia Eagles aren't only coming together on the field, they're also building bonds off the field.
Check out wide receiver Marcus Johnson being baptized, many of his teammates by his side. Johnson shared this picture yesterday with the caption, "First time being baptized, corporate worship is a beautiful thing. Cleansed and reborn in Jesus' name." The picture is from the service yesterday at the team's hotel in Charlotte.
Behind me is the Georgia.
And that happened during the regular season. So to the Philadelphia Eagles, congratulations for your accomplishments on the field and in the locker room. Thank you. Now, we're going to stick with the theme of football and baptism because New England Patriots, you also have a moment in this, and this comes from owner Bob Kraft, who has taken people, Hall of Famers, over to Israel for baptism in the same spot that Jesus was baptized. Let's take a look.
Behind me is the Jordan River, where Jesus was baptized. And today, a number of the Hall of Famers are going to get to have that same experience. For Aeneas Williams and a lot of our other players, this may be one of the most spiritual and personal moments of this trip.
It's an honor and privilege for me to come here and perform your baptism ceremony. And it's an honor to have a pastor here with me. Your name? Pastor Aeneas Williams, the Spirit Church, Ferguson, Missouri. All right.
So glad to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen? This is our faith, right?
Baptism is an outward sign of what has already happened on the inside of us.
Amen.
Getting in the water, literally your sins have been washed away, and when you come up, it is symbolically, it's a new person, and the old person has been buried. So we go now. I don't know why y'all quiet. What is this, church?
Where's the church?
We getting ready to make some noise, right? We getting ready to go on.
Rejoice in the Lord. Rejoice in the Lord.
We rejoice.
Hallelujah. Let's go.
As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Come on, brothers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the robe and crown, good Lord.
I'm going to baptize you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, sinners, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sinners, let's go down, down in the river to pray.
Hallelujah. Amen. Hallelujah.
Pastor, you were awesome. You were great, what you did. And to see the joy on the people's faces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be here.
Some of the best that ever played in the game get baptized, have a life-changing experience, and you gave them that. How does that feel?
I brought them here, but
Yeah.
I've actually had the pleasure of doing this in the past and seeing how these are guys who played in Super Bowls, who were Heisman Trophy winners, some of them, and having them being baptized here, so it's the greatest day in their life. The people here impact America and can be positive role models. So if they're happy and they're spiritual and they're doing good things, I mean, they're great guys. Look at the guys in this trip.
I know.
These are the finest guys ever to play the game, and here, I mean, they're just awesome people.
And it's incredible because, like, we were sitting here listening to Marshall talk about Bruce and say that he hated playing against him, but you see them on the bus together, and they're talking, laughing. They respect each other so much.
And these are guys who are all big celebrities in their own light. It makes me feel good. Anyhow.
This place means a lot to you.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I came here the first time in '63 when the country was 15 years old. So I feel very much at home here. And I'm happy you're here.
I'm very happy to be here.
So I'm very happy to see that both the Eagles and the Patriots are doing something really good to help their fellow man in their communities. We're going to end our show today with a military march, past parade, and here's some music. For Dallas Pearson producer, I'm your host, Jeff Williams. You are watching North Star Oasis. Reminding you that there's 319 shopping days left until Christmas. Thanks for watching. See you next week.